You are now live with Dylan Kimlin.
Hello everyone, this is Dylan Kimlin. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's topic is one that I have been heavily involved with for quite a long time, and it's regarding the professional space of Australian pickleball. I've had multiple people reach out and ask me to discuss this, and it's a tricky one. There's a lot of different variables in it, and hopefully I can give you a balanced and neutral take on sort of where things are at the moment. As always, if you haven't yet, please follow me on socials to keep up to date with all things Australian pickleball, as well as like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've done a bunch of great interviews lately, and we will continue to do so. I've got more in the pipeline coming up, which will be good for you to tune in and watch as well. But basically, the discussion today is my prediction on Australian pickleball within the pro space. Now, there's probably a lot of people watching at home that have either got no idea about what's going on with pro pickleball or have a very vague, you only keep up with by social media or something. Like you don't really know the going ons. Before I get into it, no t-shirt time. This video, obviously I do my t-shirt time each episode, but as I'm discussing the pro space, figure there's probably a lot of brands that don't want to be associated with an opinion piece. So better safe than sorry to not bring anything up. And on that note, this is an opinion piece. Okay, so I might be wrong, and that's cool. All right. But I was speaking to quite a few very successful professional people last weekend at a pickleball tournament, and we were talking about having an opinion on something. Now, I've always had a mantra in life. I've followed this with everything that I do, that I do not have an opinion on something unless I'm educated in that something. I see so many people on social media go and spout these things that they clearly just don't know what they're talking about. And I don't want to be one of those people. So before I dive into this, why should you consider my opinion, and why is it worthy listening to? Well, I have worked alongside Pro Pickleball basically since its inception in Australia. So obviously within the broadcast and media space, I worked alongside the NPL when they began. I also worked alongside the PPL, which is now the PPA Australia, and MLPA since they began. And on that note, I do want to address, I was saddened to hear that CEO of PPA Australia, Adam, is no longer with the organisation. I've worked with, like I said, those guys since they began, back when it was Tim, James, and Adam. And they were three dudes who, they just had so much enthusiasm. They were really excited about creating something. There was so much momentum within Australian pickleball at that point in time. There was, like I said, the NPL were also sort of starting then. And for me, whatever your opinions might be on him as a person, on him as a CEO, for me, I have respect because it's hard to trailblaze. And as someone who quite literally pioneered the media space for Australian pickleball within broadcasting and commentary, I will always give credit to people that create something. As I mentioned, everyone has opinions, but no one ever acts upon them. And I just needed to tip my hat to him for a second there, because it's hard to just create something out of thin air. And PPL obviously turned into PPA Australia and MLP Australia, and they've positively influenced so many lives. So that was my first point. So I've worked with these groups since they've started. I've also been a two-time director of facilities, which host a ton of tournaments. I've president of a club, inaugural, built it from the ground up, coached hundreds of people across, the sport, as well as a qualified referee, state level tournament director, multiple level tournament director for club events as well. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a reference point as to my perspective and where I'm coming into it. I have not come from it as a player perspective, though. And that's probably really important because players will obviously perceive this a little bit differently, both in the pro space and not the pro space. I want to do a little bit of a thought exercise with you all here because you might have noticed at home, I've had a lot of people recently ask me, Dylan, why aren't you involved with certain tournaments? You know, you're not covering XYZ tournaments anymore. What's happening there? And I wanted to address it. I have commentated for years now, and I've always wanted to support the pro space. I've always wanted to promote these players that are trying to make, potentially make an income, potentially, you know, get into that world where it's almost life-changing. You don't need to work a 9 to 5 anymore because you could potentially do sport, which is awesome. But I've unfortunately over the last 2 years, no, last year, probably exaggerating a little bit there. There's a very small percentage of tournament providers that have basically decided that they don't want to pay commentators anymore. We either get paid nothing or next to it. And as someone that runs a business, you know, anyone that I've worked alongside will tell you that I work 10 to 14 hour days typically, covering all of you at home. And I do this for the love of the game, but there does need to be some financial incentive for it because ask yourself right now, would you work 12-hour days without getting paid? So I've stepped away from certain organizations. I'm not working for them at this point in time, and it's purely financial. I wish the players the best of luck. I want them to succeed, and I apologize for them because I know quite a few of them are dragged into commentary. They might be absolutely exhausted. You know, they've been playing all day. They get pulled in anyway to talk about, you know, players that they might have just lost to. It's rough, to say the least. Additionally, it affects their highlight reels. It affects the things that they can use to bolster their own profession when you don't have professional commentators coming in and pumping them up. You might have noticed at home that I've been doing a lot of stuff with other sports recently, and it has been incredible from an educational perspective because they have realized that I've been doing AFL, for example, if someone takes an absolute massive mark or they kick a great goal or something and the commentary is bad, it just ruins everything. Like the player has to go back and edit, get rid of the commentary or mute it altogether, put some music over the top of it. The organization also has to do that. It's a lose-lose for everyone. If you have people that actually, you know, can bolster the player, pump them up, it's just better overall. So I just wanted to point that out. I've had people ask me, lots of people actually, why are you not involved with a lot of certain events? That just sort of gives you an idea. I'm having a bit of a tangent here, but I don't mind a bit of a ramble. I am, however, still heavily involved within commentary and broadcasting for pickleball. So I've been doing just a crazy amount of club level, state level events, and it has been exceptional. So if anything, I've been slowly, I guess, not as much involved with the pro space, but been helping the 99%. And that is the thought exercise that I wanted to bring up with you all, because there's so much attention on the pro players. But they are just the 1%. So viewers at home, you might be like, oh, Dylan, you don't know what you're talking about. The pros are essential. Can you tell me right now who is the 75th best player in Australia? Okay. If you've managed to go through and bring up ratings or rankings or something, is that 75th best person, would you consider them a pro? Okay. So that gives you a bit of an idea. I did a video quite a while back just regarding numbers, and I think we had 20,000 or so members in Australian pickleball, And let's use that as a reference point, 20,000. It's a bit more, but it's 20,000. So if we have 20,000 and we can't even name 75, then why is there so much attention on this one? It's probably less than 1%. You math people can tell me. But it's an interesting point, right? When we actually lay it out like that there's so much attention on this potentially less than 75 people. And I think this is starting to be realized by a lot of professional organizations, a lot of sponsors, a lot of venues, a lot of groups that they're catering to the 99% because that's where the revenue is. They make money from the 99%. Let's face it, the pro players do not spend money on tournaments. They don't go and buy paddles. They expect to be sponsored by paddles. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not calling you guys out. But it's everyone else that they actually make money from. So, where do I think the space is going? I actually think we are due for a bit of a reset. Crazy to consider that, right? Like, Dylan, what are you talking about? We have so much momentum. The sport is booming. Yes, it is booming, but not in Australia in the professional sense. Okay? Believe me when I say the numbers are booming in every other sense. Our beginners are through the roof. Intermediate players are through the roof. We have our masters scene is blossoming. It's a volatile scene at the moment, but the masters space, there's just so much high competition. It's great to see. And masters players, I want to point out, I know the professional space and the masters space often cross. For this particular topic, I'm not discussing the masters pro space. Okay, because I consider you guys, you're your own little entity. So please take that in mind. But yeah, I think we're due for a little bit of a reset, and I'll go into it in a little bit. Okay, so I've talked to some very high-ranking people within Australian pickleball that, and I'm not going to say who they are. You know, the whole protect your sources thing. That effectively believe we've gone too fast, too hard, too fast. We have invested quite literally millions of dollars into a sport of, as I mentioned, 20,000 or so members. Okay. We as a country also cannot keep up with the pace of other countries that are investing in pro pickleball. So we've seen recently with PPA Asia, with India, with China. Obviously, I'm not even going to bring up America. Like, we're just talking about our local competitors within the pro space. They just have money that we can't even comprehend. They can just straight up have millions of dollars in the tournament, or a minimum, like they can over a year invest millions of dollars, and you know it's gonna come to a point where the pro players are going to have to make a business decision of, is it worthwhile playing in Australia? Because if you're, and I think this is a tricky one, I brought it up on the Dinks Up podcast chat yesterday, and yes, we are still communicating, guys. I know we haven't done content in a long time, but I brought it up in that I believe anyone that is under the age of 25 as a pro player can financially take the risk of having a dabble. They can go and play around different countries. They can try and build up a profile to potentially, with the goal of potentially making it big enough to go and play in America. Amelia Schmidt is a great example of this. She's dominating over at the APP. It's great to see, by the way. Well done, Amelia. We've seen recently players from Australia going to the States and playing, and it looked like doing quite well. So, and obviously Townsend and Schmidt played very well in their events as a duo, which is really exciting. Good to see the old duo back together. But they had to go to America to get like international recognition. We are seeing time and time again players going to India, players going, and now the PPA Asia, which will come up in this opinion piece, it's more people are going for the big bucks elsewhere. They're not, obviously we are having our tournaments here in Australia, but there's just consistent examples of players, rather than playing in Australia, they're going overseas. And international players, rather than coming to Australia, they're opting to stay and play overseas. So why do I believe we are due for a reset? Well, let's just look at public information. Obviously, in my world, I see a lot of things that I simply cannot bring up. Okay? The broadcast space, I've tried to create a culture that it is safe. We see and hear things that would probably mortify some of you at home. Players with their behavior, there's just a wide variety of things. But we don't talk about it because we, as players, we all get frustrated. We all have moments on court that we don't want other people to know about. It's just human nature. So please understand, I'm going to try and give this with a neutral and varied take, but there's definitely experiences that I've had which will guide said take. So keeping all of that in mind, we're just going to look at public information. So if you've been living under a rock in Australia, there are two major groups within professional pickleball. So there is the National Pickleball League, and then there is PPA Australia, which are affected. I don't know if they're merged. I don't know what their relationship is exactly. But PPA Australia, Major League Pickleball Australia. I think they're two separate organisations, but they're one entity, if that's the right terminology. And NPL do tournaments and a team format within rounds. PPA is a traditional tournament format, and MLPA is a team format. So you can see that they effectively target the same market within the pro players, which, as we've already talked about, is about 75 players, give or take, maybe more. So obviously there's a consistent reference point or a consistent discussion point of league wars that get discussed. Now, as someone who's worked for both organisations, I don't really get into that too much, but it's fair to say, purely from a which players they can play with or which players they can pick, there are clashes. There are also schedule clashes. We've seen that, once again, public information. We've seen schedule clashes and schedule changes happen throughout 2025. And it makes life very difficult for a pro player. So I mentioned if you're under the age of 25, you can dabble with it. But if you're over the age of 25, I can guarantee you there's a lot of players that, they might have just finished a degree, or they might be 1 or 2 years into a career of their choice, and they're just doing they're just trying professional pickleball to see whether it's worthwhile or not. But, they have to make a career decision, especially if the money is overseas now, as we've sort of touched on. And I'm not talking like, it's like you might get enough for a, you might win 10 grand or something, and you got paddle sponsors and stuff. I'm just chucking numbers out. I'm talking life-changing money. That's the difference here. Over in international, if you win a bunch of these big events, you're doing really well. So, and including sponsorship, and then all of the other benefits that come with it. So, if you have anywhere between $70,000 to $100,000 plus job right now as someone that's 25 and older, and I'm in that demographic, so I kind of would like to know that I'm talking about the people that might be affected by this. You have a career decision, because right now we've had historical evidence. Well, if we consider the historical evidence of Australian Pro Pickleball, would you at home consider it, if you're a pro player, would you consider it financially safe? And there is probably a very wide variety of people that have just said no in their head. Because there is just constant changes. We haven't had consistency and just a straight approach to a lot of this for a long time. And yes, we're in a growth stage. I will take that. We are in a growth stage. However, we've grown too quickly. I use the reference point all the time of Australian Pickleball in general, talking to Jen Rammermurphy, current president of Pickleball Australia, that she has told me that we are sprinting before we can crawl. And we've seen these tournaments with millions of dollars invested, or rather leagues with millions of dollars invested, that A, we don't have the player base for it, and B, how's it going to hurt us in the long run, which is what I'm really concerned about. So, stability. We have seen, for starters, broadcast has been heavily affected across the board. Recently, it's public information that NPL have less teams now. Now they did have more teams in their rounds. They've gone to less, and whether that's for good or for ill, it's showing. It's just regarding the consistency I'm talking about. So they've made some slight changes. So that means less players are going to get an opportunity to play in the NPL. Which, is that a good or a bad thing? I actually think it's a good thing, because as I've alluded to several times now, if we are looking at that 75 odd players, maybe less, you would rather have. I'm very much a quality over quantity person. You would rather have the best of the best battling it out, and then that's when you bring up your Div 2s, your challenges for MLP. That's where those guys come in to work on their game to get to that point. It's almost like a pyramid or a hierarchy to get to that very top level. I actually think this is a slow indication of a reset that I'm referring to, because we're stretched thin at the moment. We just don't have, A, the revenue, which we will discuss, and B, we just don't have the players. We're not tennis. We don't have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players that could all easily compete for that top 500 spot, So NPL's going to make some changes there. PPA Australia have just lost their CEO, which I've just talked about. That is ginormous. Okay, whether he left or not, like however he was terminated, I don't know. It's any other organizer, any other industry, if a CEO is gone, it's huge. That is massive. So that there is a clear indication of scrutiny regarding. Sorry, getting a phone call in the middle of my broadcast here. Ironically, Dave, who does broadcasting for pickleball tournaments, is trying to call me, mate. Thank you. No. So, where was I? Yeah, so PPA have just lost their CEO. Slam Jam, by the way, if you haven't yet, please follow their content. They've done amazing work as of late, just providing the news. As I mentioned, there's probably a lot of players that just don't care, or they keep up to date, but they don't know everything. There's just been a lot of, at this point in time, PPA Australia and MLP Australia, I loved working for them. I don't do much with them at all now. I love their players, but I just can't keep up. Like, honestly, they're just, with Adam leaving, and they've had a CEO change. They've got consistent meetings that are being either cancelled or rescheduled. Players with visa issues. Like Slam Jam have done a far more comprehensive look into it than I will for this video, but I feel for the players. I really do, because it just seems to be, it's just in a tricky spot. And hopefully they get back to or find consistency. That's all we can ask for, especially considering we're talking about financial stability here. So, reset. Why do I think it's going to happen? Simply put, revenue. Okay, money in, money out. We don't. Anyone that's ever operated their own business, I run my own broadcast commentary business, would know, simply put, you just need to make more than you're losing. And is that happening right now? Like, where's the money coming from? And that is, it's probably something, if you're someone who is trying to make a profession out of this, you need to know this because that's effectively your pay. We talked about, over in Asia and India, they've got squillions of dollars because they have big money backing them. They have just stupid money that's coming in. And I think there will come a point where players will opt to either A, stop playing pro pickleball altogether or just play it as a hobby in Australia, or B, they're going to have to play overseas. And that's just the reality of it. There's probably a lot of players that don't like hearing this, but it's better that we have a cold splash of water right now before you are too financially invested in your career, especially for our younger players. So, hard reset. Australian pickleball numbers are skyrocketing. We've invested too heavily in professional pickleball with no gain. I don't think it's, are pro leagues making a profit right now? I genuinely want that question put out there. You at home, it's a discussion piece, it's an opinion piece. I don't think they are. Like the MPL have the jar, so they have one source of revenue. I do not know where MLPA, PPA, Australia get their money from. I'm assuming international investment. And obviously the tournaments make a little bit from players signing up, registration fees. Let's talk about that, actually. You're probably wondering, how does a tournament make money? I'm a tournament director, I can tell you. I'm probably talking in-house here, but it's good for you to know. Tournaments, either A, break even, or B, make a very minimal profit. Okay, just from registration fees. So, because you have the expenses, let's say $80 a fee. I know it's probably more. But let's say you sign up for $80 times, 100 people, whatever, 200 people. That money that is earned is immediately cut up into everything else. So venue hire is easily one of the biggest expenses in Australian pickleball because we don't have enough venues. So the venues can charge whatever they want. So venue hire immediately. Then you've got staff hire. Referees need to get paid. Referees should be getting paid more, by the way. Just saying. Broadcast, media. So myself, other people that do broadcast. Dave, who just interrupted my video. People that do photography, videography, first aid staff. There's all manner of people that need to get paid. You've also got pickleball brackets fees. So brackets take a percentage of the money that you pay for. I know Pickleball Australia have an agreement with them. So sanctioned tournaments, they cop some of the fee. PA and PAQ, PAP New South Wales, whatever state body you might be under, they take a percentage as well. You've got medal costs. You've got to pay for medals, and they are stupid expensive for what they are. You're getting the point. Tape, you got balls. There's just so many things that at the end of the day, the financial benefit of registration fees barely covers it. That's where sponsors come in. So that's why tournaments are so heavily involved with getting sponsors. And when you look at it all, we haven't even put in prize money. And that is the killer, I think, for our pro leagues. Now, our pro players are going to be like, Dylan, shut up. I need the prize money if I'm a pro player. And I understand. But the pro leagues need to make a profit. They're a business. They have to pay their staff. But how are they doing it? And that's where I think things are dire, because there's just simply not enough revenue. There's not enough money made. hence the term hard reset. I think we are due for a hard reset in Australian pickleball. Pro players that are within the top 10, top 20 will find money internationally. There's no doubt about it. Everyone else will either A, have to get into the top 20 to be able to play in Asia, India, America, etc., or B, realize that the timing that they are wanting to go pro is it is too early. It's a sad thing to think about, but like pickleball in America started in the 60s, and now we are here at 2025 as of this recording, and now we're starting to see money. It's a lot of years. So Australian pickleball, unfortunately, is less than 10 years old. And we've gone from a sport that happened before a pandemic, that quickly grew during the pandemic, to now having hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in tournaments and players trying to make a living off of a sport that's less than 10 years old. It's just not financially sound. It's just not financially safe. And there is a grim reality to it. We are just simply too young. The tournament space will continue to flourish, and it's not because of the pros. It's because of the 99%. There's a reason why I have done a bit of a business pivot in heavily focusing on club tournaments and state level events. I'm trying to go out and see as many people as I can, because we're getting, like if I use Pickleball Tournaments Australia, for example, the Grand Slam series, we're getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players, but barely any Opens players. It's because the Opens players are all focused on trying to make that money, which, by the way, guys, I totally understand. I do the same. But the money and the revenue is not made from pro pickleball. And we are due for a bit of a reset. I think once we go back to, let's say we wind it back a little bit, where these pro tournaments, for starters, need to dramatically drop their prize money. Players will despise me for saying that. Sorry, guys, I'm being the bad guy here. But prize money needs to go down, and significant sponsor involvement needs to go way up. Why do we not have anyone in these pro leagues that is dedicated to getting sponsors? I don't know. Does this just fall under the role of the CEO or the financial person? You look at every other sport in the world that is a professional space, and there are people dedicated to going out and getting sponsors. You think about, like I mentioned, I do AFL. Every single team has their own sponsors. I know last season NPL tried doing this. They tried having team sponsors, so local businesses could sponsor a team. For whatever reason, they opted to not do it this season. But there just needs to be more ways for a revenue for an organisation for this to be stable. And I think at this point in time, we're just not there. Sorry to say. So, yeah, we just need a reset. I will say it's not all bleak, because there are examples of different organizations trying to do things a bit more smartly. So I'm going to bring up the All-Stars guys. I did say to the Masters group that I would bring up them later on. So All-Stars are new. They've started this year. I haven't done anything with them, so I'm not, this is just an external looking in. Where, from my understanding, entrance fee was higher, so you have to buy your way in, but there's prize money involved, which the entrance fee covers. Could be wrong there. There might be sponsorship involved. I don't know. But it's an example of, it's like playing poker, where you buy in and you could potentially win more, but you could also lose what you've bought in with. I think there needs to be more shrewd ways of going forward with prize money. Either that, or we get heavy sponsors involved to actually cover said events. Now, obviously, sponsorship is a heavy discussion point within Australian pickleball, and there's probably a whole nother video just on that alone. But right now, The question you need to ask yourself, especially if you have aspirations of being a pro player, is will this be financially stable in the next 3 years? Because if you are someone that's in their early 20s, that means you're going to be in your mid to late 20s by then. So, you might be thinking about having a family. You might be thinking about having a house, which, geez, that's a nightmare at the moment. There's so many other things. Or you could be working towards that degree, getting your vet, TAFE course, whatever, and guaranteed money is there when you finish those things and you have career experience. And I feel for our players because they're in a tricky situation, especially if you're not in that top 10, top 15, because money is the entire point of this discussion. So there will be a reset. It will bounce back. I think 5 years from now, we will bounce back. We will be more established. We'll finally get recognised as a sport in Australia. The Olympics will come into it later on down the road. And it will be, when it becomes legitimate, that is when we will start to get heavy investment from big sponsors. We'll get heavy investment from big groups that already want to get involved, like NPL, for example. And I'm saying this because I covered them during the Green Zone. We had the likes of AHM. So they're big organizations that are not in pickleball. It's all well and good to get sponsors, and I'm not going to name anyone, but it's all well and good to get sponsors that are in pickleball, but we need to get external sponsors from people outside of pickleball because it gets more eyes on the product. And alternatively, then people that might want to get, something like health insurance, it's a two-way street, right? Whereas, right now, if you want to buy a paddle, you already know what brand you like. It doesn't matter what sponsors played on the commercial. So, once again, shrewd business needs to be applied here. I think prize money needs to go down. I think, in general, we just need to slow down. We've absolutely launched everything as we can into the pro space in Australia. But simply put, once the Asian market really starts to take off, especially, India, China, and just like the PPA Asia and the other, Vietnam. Let's look at Vietnam. My goodness, they're blowing up over there. Once those guys all get the ball rolling, we can't compete at this point in time. We are not there financially. They have all the money. They can invite all the players to as many courts as they want because they don't have the council infrastructural regulations that we do here. They have the fact that we just don't have enough venues is a great example of that. Vietnam, for instance, they can just build a court within a week and it's a pro-level court. We can't do that here. There's so many pros compared to cons to playing overseas right now. And I think it's going to become more and more prevalent as we go on. Either way, that's a little bit of a tangent, a little bit of a ramble. But I do predict a genuine reset of the pro space. There will still be a pro space, just it won't be as profitable as it currently is in Australia. And I believe pros will have to seriously have a career discussion about whether they go overseas and play or whether they work full-time and then earn a little bit of money on the side here in Australia for this point in time. But in the long run, we will be significantly better off if we did it this way because we grow organically rather than just chucking money at it and hoping for the best. Either way, Dylan Kimlin here. Thank you for listening. As always, if you haven't yet, please like, subscribe, and share this around. Let me know your opinion on socials. Tell me if I'm wrong, because I might be. But that is the beauty of an opinion piece. So thank you. Have a good day.